Welcome to the Firewall Policies lesson. After completing this lesson, you will be able to achieve these objectives. Describe what firewall policies are. Understand how firewall policies work. Describe how inspection modes work. Configure firewall policies. Firewall policies are sets of rules that you use to control whether traffic in your network is accepted by FortiGate, and if it is accepted, how FortiGate processes it. Firewall policies define what traffic matches them and what FortiGate does when traffic does match. Each policy has match criteria, which you can define using the following objects: incoming and outgoing interfaces, source, destination, service, schedule. When traffic matches a firewall policy, FortiGate applies the action configured in that firewall policy. If the action is set to deny, FortiGate drops the session. If the action is set to accept, FortiGate accepts the session. Both the source field and the destination field of a firewall policy can match two different criteria: IP subnet or internet services. To use an IP subnet as the source or destination, you must first create a firewall address that corresponds to that subnet. To create a policy that allows internal users to access the internet, you must configure a firewall address that matches the IP subnet of the internal network and use it as the source in the firewall policy. You can also create a firewall address for the IP address of a specific device, such as a web server. You would use this address as the destination in any firewall policies that you want to allow access to the server. A default all option is available for both source and destination IP addresses. The option matches all possible IP addresses. To set a source user, you configure firewall authentication and then select either specific users or user groups. To use an internet service as a source or destination, select the appropriate service from the Internet Service Database, ISDB. The ISDB is a list that includes the IP subnets of commonly used web service providers, such as Meta, YouTube, and so on. The FortiGate administrator is also able to add custom services to the list. The FortiGate policy table contains all firewall policies. When matching traffic, FortiGate checks the policy table from top to bottom and processes traffic using the first policy that matches. If there is no match, FortiGate drops the traffic by applying the default implicit deny firewall policy located at the bottom of the table. Because the first match is used, it is best practice to have the most specific policies located at the top of the table, and the more general policies lower in the table. This makes sure that FortiGate applies the correct policy to the traffic. After accepting traffic, FortiGate may apply other features and settings to that traffic based on the firewall policy configuration. This can include security scanning, such as antivirus, application control, and web filtering. Scanning could block the traffic if, for example, FortiGate discovers it contains a virus. FortiGate also applies network address translation and logs traffic based on the firewall policy settings. When configuring a firewall policy, you must select between two inspection modes: flow-based inspection mode and proxy-based inspection mode. Flow-based inspection mode examines the traffic as it passes through FortiGate without any buffering. As each packet arrives, it is processed and forwarded without waiting for the complete file or web page. FortiGate does not alter the original, which means that any features that modify content, such as safe search enforcement, are not supported in this mode. In proxy-based inspection mode, FortiGate buffers traffic and examines it as a whole before determining an action. Because FortiGate examines the data as a whole, it can examine more points of data than it does when using flow-based inspection. But using this mode does add latency to the overall transmission speed. Proxy-based inspection is more thorough than flow-based inspection, yielding fewer false positives and negative results. Let's put these concepts into practice by completing the following lab simulation. You have completed this lesson. You are now able to describe what firewall policies are, understand how firewall policies work, describe how inspection modes work, configure firewall policies,